Matt Stafford, the biggest name that's being talked about so far here at the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Well, that story, along with the Raiders, has had a new turn and a new twist to it. Of course there was, right? We'll tell you about that plus more on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 27th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're finding the show wherever you get your favorite podcast, that's great. If you're checking us out on the YouTube page, that's great as well. We definitely appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and, of course, the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes on the YouTube page each and every day, whether I'm at the house or I'm on the road like we are right now in Indianapolis. He makes sure that it's looking good and sounding good each and every day, so we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well, as many of you do, at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Normally, we have your calls or texts on the show. We don't have any calls or texts today. Coming up in segment number 3 as we close things out, you'll actually hear from a couple of the draft prospects. UNLV linebacker Jackson Woodard. My guy Vinny Bonsignor had an opportunity to catch up with him on Wednesday when the players started to speak at the podium. Really good stuff from him, and I wanted to pass that along because, well, we had a couple calls and texts about a couple UNLV prospects, including Jackson Woodard. So I wanted to pass that along so you can hear what he had to say as he's here at the Scouting Combine. Also, South Carolina edge Kyle Kennard. I had a quick chance to catch up with him. He was at the podium, so I got a couple questions in from him. A really good edge rusher there from South Carolina, a guy that's going to be drafted very early in April's draft. So you'll hear from him in segment number 3 as well. And trust and believe there's a lot more prospects going to be speaking on the podium the next couple days. And so I'll be able to bring that to the table as well. Some guys that I think may be intriguing, not necessarily the biggest names out there, but some guys that you might want to be on the lookout for April's draft. So that'll come up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Segment number 2, we'll talk about the big decision that the Raiders need to make when it comes to their quarterback position. Do they make a trade for a veteran not free agent, but a veteran quarterback like Matt Stafford? Or do they stick with the game plan of going after a guy in the draft and maybe having to make a trade up to go get a guy like a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders? And I said stick with the plan just because I'm talking about building through the draft. I'm not saying that that's their plan, but that's really kind of my plan as the way I've looked at it for this offseason for the Silver and Black. Not necessarily saying it's their plan, but we'll talk about it in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here is segment number 1. News and notes of the day, and it's really just about the new twist and turn that's gone on with this Matt Stafford saga when it comes to the Raiders, when it comes to the Rams, and any other team that may be interested in acquiring the veteran quarterback. So let's jump right into it. This story, I felt like it was just really a negotiating tool for Stafford and the Rams, and that they were trying to find a couple teams that were interested in him so he could take back an offer to the Rams. And they say, yeah, we'll match that. Or no, we're not going to match it. We'll get close, though, and they'll end up coming to an agreement, and he'll play for the Rams in 2025. And they probably still will. Right. But it just feels like the more and more conversation that's going on, the more and more time that's gone by, it feels like this is becoming closer to a reality type situation, not just for the Raiders, but multiple teams have a chance to go get Matt Stafford. And it feels like the Rams may actually be okay with moving on from him, trading him, because they just don't value him at where he values himself. And look, I think he's supposed to make $27 million this year with the Rams on his contract. He's got a couple years left, and he wants to be closer to $50 million. I think he wants to be in that $50 million range, but probably as close to it as possible. So he's out there shopping himself, and not really him, but his agent shopping himself to see if they can make that happen. It sounds like there's multiple teams like the Giants, the Raiders, the Browns, possibly the Steelers, and others that could be interested. And, my guy Jordan Ronan, who covers the Giants really well, he had tweeted out that, after a couple days of the scouting combine, his sense is the Giants are going to do everything they can to acquire Matt Stafford. So that was interesting. He said he doesn't think it's going to happen. Thinks he's going to return to the Rams, but he does think that the Giants are really going to go and be 10 toes down. Well, this is where the twist and turn came. Jordan Schultz, I've known him for a long time. He's a contributor on Fox Sports. He's on Colin Cowherd's show all the time. He's got a really good podcast with Draymond Green right now. I mean, he's been, doing this thing for a long time. He sent me a text of the tweet that he was sending out saying this. Sources: Raiders minority owner Tom Brady recently hosted Rams quarterback Matt Stafford at his home in Montana, where they spent time together and went skiing. Brady has been actively trying to convince Stafford to join the Raiders, and discussions are ongoing. Several teams are interested in Stafford if the Rams decide to move him, with Las Vegas believed to be the most aggressive suitor. That's from Jordan Schultz on Fox. So, of course, when you read that, what are you reading? You're reading tampering. Tom Brady is no longer Tom Brady, the soon-to-be Hall of Famer, the guy that's recently retired, the guy that has 7 rings. Yeah, he's all that, but he's also minority owner of the Raiders. So that there, even though Matt Stafford's agent has been given permission to talk to teams for a potential trade, does not mean that Tom Brady, who is minority owner of the Raiders, can host Matt Stafford at his house and try to convince him and put on the recruiting, full press to try to get him to go to the Raiders. That would be the true definition of tampering. So obviously that caught a big buzz from a lot of different people, and you're starting to see like the NFL insiders almost like kind of battling with sources and trying to get confirmations, and that's why I'm not an NFL insider. Don't want to be, right? I'm just passing along the information. I'm like the weatherman, right? You see that the rain is supposed to come. I'm telling you wear a jacket. I'm not telling you how long it's going to rain for. I'm just saying you might want to take a jacket so you don't get wet. So Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network sent out a tweet, reached for comment about an internet rumor that Tom Brady hosted Matt Stafford on a recruiting visit in Montana. Brady's longtime agent Don Yee told me, "I know that reporters sometimes make mistakes in their haste. This story's inaccurate." So that was the first no, that didn't happen, denial that no, that didn't happen, because again, that is the true definition of tampering. Then it goes on a little bit further. How about Ian Rappaport, Rap Sheet, who I actually had on my show a couple days ago, and I wish this had been out there before I had him on the show. I would have asked him about it. He tweeted out, Raiders minority owner Tom Brady and Rams quarterback Matt Stafford ran into each other at a ski resort in Montana. Sources say the meeting, unplanned, was not extensive or in-depth and did not include Brady hosting or recruiting Stafford, despite reports saying otherwise. And then he goes on to say Tom Brady and Matt Stafford, like many other high-profile people, both own houses in the same ski community. There you have it. So there's obviously different angles and sides to this story. And I always say that stories have 3 sides, right? His side, her side, and somewhere in the middle is the truth, or his side and his side, somewhere in the middle is the truth. Whatever the case may be, it just feels like, and again, I don't know this to be fact, it feels like there's a little bit of trying to clean up whatever may have happened. We know that Tom Brady is going to be very heavily involved in the recruitment of free agents. He's very involved when it came to the hiring process of the head coach, where he was on the phone with Ben Johnson's agent, who got him to sit down and even talk with the Raiders about potentially being their head coach. Obviously, they didn't get him. He went to Chicago, but he's been heavily involved. And so maybe they just ran into each other. And I say that in air quotes. Maybe it was a little bit more, but it does feel like that the Raiders now have some decisions to make on what are they going to do. And it sounds like if we're to believe these reports that are out there, that the Raiders have some interest in Matt Stafford. How high is the interest? What would they be willing to pay him? What would they be willing to give up in draft capital? Not too sure, but as my guy Vinny Bonsignore has been talking about for a while, this is not just one of those situations that they're trying to drive up the price and trying to get some suitors so they can go back to the Rams and say, here you go, and match it. This sounds like this is something that has legs and could be real. And now you're starting to see guys like Mel Kiper, who told me as he joins my radio show on ESPN each and every Thursday, he does his mock drafts based off of what he's hearing from different people. His latest mock draft, he had Ashton Genty at number 6, had Shedeur Sanders dropping to number 7. Why would he do that? Because the Raiders acquire Matt Stafford to be their quarterback by way of trade. So that leads me to segment number 2, the decisions that the Raiders have to make. We know this information's out there. We know that there's some probably level of truth to all of it, right? However you want to jumble it up, I'm sure that there's some element of truth to all of it. Could the Raiders potentially face some fines or whatever the case may be? Could they lose some draft capital if they do find out that tampering took place? Sure, maybe. But, they also could go ahead and complete the trade, or they could not. Again, decisions that they have to make. We'll tell you about those decisions. We'll kind of weigh the pros and cons of both. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Decision time for the Raiders, veteran quarterback, rookie quarterback. And the reason I say it's decision time because I feel like if something's going to happen with this Matt Stafford being traded anywhere, it's probably going to happen sooner rather than later. I don't think this is going to be something that's going to drag out very long. From the conversations I've had here at the scouting combine, Jimmy Sexton, who is the agent for both Matt Stafford and Sam Darnold, likes to move quickly. Likes to get things done. And so talking to a couple different people think that something's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. This is the big domino that's going to drop. Matt Stafford, whether he goes to the Giants, the Browns, the Raiders, the Titans, whoever needs a quarterback, the Steelers, wherever he ends up going, this is going to be the domino that's going to shape free agency as far as Sam Darnold's concerned, and obviously the draft as well. What do teams like the G-Men, the Browns, the Raiders, what do they do for their quarterback situation? So here's one hand. Matt Stafford, if you're the Raiders, 2, maybe 3 years tops, right? $100 million guaranteed is basically what you're probably looking at. You try to win as many possible games you can with him right now, and that tells your team and your fan base you have a plan to get back to winning. At least that's the perception, right? Matter of fact, Benjamin Albright, KOA in Denver, NFL Insider, he was on my radio show on Wednesday, and I asked him straight up, what does bringing Matt Stafford into the Raiders organization do for them right away?
You bring Matt Stafford and you're providing credibility. You're telling Max Crosby, hey, look, we're trying to do something here. You're telling, Nate Hobbs, who I think is probably your second best defender, to be honest. We're trying to do something here. And you're telling free agents out there, hey, we're trying to do something here. You know, we're not. You don't come here to cash in one last time before you retire. We're trying to build something here. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part of it. I think establishing a credibility is a part of it. Anytime you're trying to go out there and you're trying to turn something over from a loser to a winner, there's that crawl, walk, run, or lose big, lose small, win big. And I get you don't want a 2-year ramp up. Realistically, that's what you're looking at to get there. But you don't want to say that because what are we going to do in the 2 years in the interim? What are these guys going to put their bodies on the line, going through 60 car crashes like a day going to do? So you want to establish that, hey, we're credible. We're actually trying to win, even if we're not considered a favorite for the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, we're the toughest division in football. You got the Kansas City Chiefs in here. You got the Chargers, who all of a sudden have credibility with Harbaugh. You got the Broncos, who just made the playoffs, and now you bring in Pete Carroll. This is a tough division.
Okay, so that's what he had to say about what it does, right? It brings them credibility. It gives them, and it sends a message to the team that they're serious about winning. Something that Pete Carroll's told us, right? And you heard it on the show here yesterday, that he doesn't want a 2-year, 3-year window to try to ramp this team up. He wants to win right now. Matt Stafford can do that. He can help provide that. Say he stays healthy. Maybe you do go and draft a Ashton Genty at number 6, and all of a sudden you have, a really good quarterback. You have a really good running back, and now you're starting to put the pieces together. My problem with that is, sure, that's cool for 2 years, right? Maybe 2 years, 3 years, maybe max. So what's next? What are you doing then? Are you drafting a quarterback later in the draft this year? Are you saying, oh, that's okay, we can wait till next year and get a guy? We can wait 2 years. We can kick the can down the road. To me, that's a dangerous slope. And this is what I tried to explain to Vinny, and I don't think that he understood it when he helped co-host my radio show. It's like, look, man, the Raiders had a rotating door at the quarterback position for the longest time. I rattled off all the quarterbacks between Rich Gannon and Derek Carr. Not saying Derek Carr is a Hall of Famer. Not saying he's a Super Bowl champ or ever going to take a team to the Super Bowl, but he stabilized that position. At least you knew what you were going to get from the quarterback position with the Raiders. And the big mistake that Dave Ziegler and company made when they sat Derek Carr down and eventually moved on from him, in my opinion, was not having the plan. Not knowing what they were going to do with the quarterback position, not having something that was set in stone. They had an idea that they thought was going to work, and it didn't, right? And so now it's been a rotating door ever since Carr left, right? Jimmy G, Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder, right? I mean, it's been a rotating door. Now what? So you bring in Matt Stafford. Okay, so now you have him there. He's 37 years old. He's had problems with his throwing arm. He's had problems with his back. Who says that he lasts another 2 years? Say he only lasts 1 year. And then all of a sudden, boom, now what do, right? He's just beat up. He can't go any further, so he has to retire. Or just can't go and just can't play. You've invested money in him, and now you still don't have your quarterback that you believe in the future. So what do? You go back to another bridge, right? So that's the scenario that you're looking at, and I'm looking at and thinking the Raiders need to figure this out. Who do they think their franchise quarterback is going to be? So that's why, as I mentioned in segment number 1, I thought that, the plan, sticking to the plan would be build this team through the draft. Right, you have 10 draft picks. You have a lot of money in free agency. You can help build that offensive line. You can put some weapons around. You can do what you have to do with the salary cap space that you have. maybe that does include a veteran quarterback like Matt Stafford, but you don't have to do that. You could build through the draft. The problem is this would be the draft that only has a couple quarterbacks. Cam Ward at the top, Shedeur Sanders, right there with them, right? They're going to be top 5, 6, 7 picks, whatever you want to say, top 10 at the worst, right? There's no way they get out of the top 10. I think we could all agree on that. After that, you got Jackson Dart, you got Jalen Milroe, you got Will Howard, you've got Dylan Gabriel, you've got Tyler Shook, you've got guys that are making some noise, but I'll promise you, none of those do anything for me. And it's just me. And that's all I could ever judge on is basically what I'm saying. It doesn't do anything for me. Those guys don't wow me. Those guys don't make me think, oh man, the Raiders have their franchise quarterback or can even develop into that guy. I mean, they could. They could sit behind a Matt Stafford for a couple of years and then you feel like you could pass the sticks on. Maybe. Right. But it just feels like a tough draw. To me, I feel like that they need one of those top 2 guys. I've been very adamant that I'm a Shedeur Sanders guy. I think it would make sense for them to get him. I think it would also make sense for the look. The Raiders need a guy that could be be in the spotlight, the franchise face alongside Max Crosby. One guy on defense, one guy on offense. And I think Shedeur could do that. He can handle that. He can help put butts in the seats at Allegiant Stadium that are wearing silver and black jerseys as opposed to, Steelers or Giants or Eagles or Vikings, whoever comes through the building, right? He can help do that. Again, I've said it many times. If they could do that in Colorado, they could definitely do that in Las Vegas. But how are you going to get one of those quarterbacks? Matt Miller from ESPN, NFL draft analyst, joined my radio show on Wednesday as well. And I asked him that same question. How do the Raiders get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders? Can one of those drop? What do they have to do? How do the Raiders find a quarterback at 6 when all these teams need quarterbacks ahead of them?
Trade up. I think that's the only way to do it. And I do think the Browns are going to take one at 2. Okay. They have to. They can't pay someone with Deshaun Watson's contract on their books. And Andrew Berry basically said today that Deshaun's contract isn't going anywhere. The injury was not nefarious. He just re-injured the tear. They're going to have to pay him. They're not going to be able to come get that money.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go after – clearly you can't go after Stafford or Darnold. Kirk Cousins, we don't know if he's going to even get released, so he can't be an option. Daniel Jones, come on, you can't do that. So I think the option is you have to trade up. But to trade up, you have to go to 1.
Right.
And that's going to be kind of costly.
Yeah.
And it's also, do the Titans want to potentially move back that far and miss out on Abdul Carter? So it is tough. It reminds me a lot like last year where – we talked about this last year. The Raiders need a quarterback.
Yep.
Okay, well, you got to get in front of all these other teams that also need a quarterback.
Right.
And then weren't able to do that.
So then he's talking about trading up, but he's not talking about trading up to number 2, where I've been talking about with Cleveland, where that could be the sweet spot for him. He's saying you got to go all the way up to number 1. He believes you go all the way up to number 1. There's a good chance that Tennessee, even though they're talking about taking a generational talent, a lot of people believe Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter could be that guy that you better get up to number 1 if you want to get that quarterback, Cam Ward or Shedeur. So then the Raiders have to make a decision. Are either one of those guys worth what it will cost to do business? That's the other element. That's the hard thing to decipher. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? So does it make more sense to try to go with the veteran and you feel like you know what you have in Matt Stafford? Maybe draft a Ashton Genty at number 6, even though I think that's still a little rich for him. Is that the 1-2 punch that you want to look at for the next couple of years and feel like, okay, the Raiders can go and try to address their quarterback of the future, maybe in a later draft when it's a little bit deeper when it comes to quarterbacks? Or should they go ahead and try to invest now and go get their guy? That's a decision that they have to make. I know that they're exploring every angle and trying to figure out exactly what to do with their QB spot because they have to, right? I don't know what the answer is, but you can't leave any stone unturned if you're the Raiders. You can look at Matt Stafford. You could look at Sam Darnold. You could look at Russell Wilson. You have to look at all these guys that could be available. You have to look at all these guys in the draft. You have to obviously pick Chip Kelly's brain, who fits with what you do. Will Howard from your time at Ohio State, obviously. He's got a lot of game film from K-State to Ohio State. Maybe he's that guy. Again, doesn't do a whole lot for me. But that's just me, right? There's others that believe that he's a big-time player. A lot of folks have a lot of confidence in Jackson Dart. I'm kind of lukewarm on him. Jalen Milroe, as much as I love Alabama football, this is the one time you are not going to get me to say, roll tide, go get that guy. I don't see him developing into a franchise quarterback in the NFL. I think he's a quarterback in college, sure. I don't see him as a quarterback in the NFL. Matter of fact, at the Combine, he actually was asked to do drills as a running back, and he declined. He said, I'm a quarterback. I respect that. But it kind of just lets you know what a lot of people think about him. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be a quarterback because they asked They asked Lamar Jackson to switch positions, and he didn't, and it worked out really well for him. He ain't Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. So that's what the Raiders' decisions are. Do they go in the Matt Stafford direction, right? Is there any kind of repercussions for this potential tampering, right? I mean, are they almost in a position where they better make a trade with the Rams, or maybe the Rams will turn them in for tampering, right? I mean, I think that's another element, a little asterisk that you have to add to this story. I think there's something there, right? I definitely do. And maybe that's a slip up by Tom Brady as a, new minority owner, and, just kind of doesn't really know all the rules and what he's supposed to do. Maybe that was a mistake on his part. Maybe it's not as serious as the way Jordan Schultz reported it. But to me, I like to live by the old saying, where there's some smoke, there's some fire. So we'll see what happens. But those are the decisions. Matt Stafford, give up some draft capital. I would definitely not give up a number 1. I really wouldn't like them giving up a number 2. I'd prefer them to give up a number 3, one of those third-round picks that they got from the Jets for Devontae Adams. Maybe you have to give up 2026's third-round pick as well. Fine, so be it. Do what you got to do if that's how you feel like the direction that you want to go, the draft capital you need to give up for them. And then what do you do at 6? Do you get a defensive tackle if Mason Graham's there? Do you get offensive lineman if Banks from Texas is there? Travis Hunter, I'm sure, will be gone. Do you go with Ashton Genty and say, hey, man, he's Daniel Jeremiah's number 3 player in this draft, right? He's number 3 rated player in the draft. Go get him, right? He has 750 carries in college, so he's got a lot of wear and tear on that body. How long is that going to last? Is that a good investment at number 6? Or do you do everything that you can to go and get your quarterback, either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, and say, okay, I got the face of the franchise. I got the franchise quarterback. Now let's build around him. Decision. That's what the Silver and Black have to do. John Spytek, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, Patrick Graham, and everyone else involved in the decision-making process, including Tom Brady. Well, let's hear from a couple of the prospects. UNLV linebacker Jackson Woodard, South Carolina edge Kyle Kennard. Had a chance to catch up with both those guys and a few others on Wednesday. You'll hear from those two in particular next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to let you get into some, sounds from the draft prospects here at the Scouting Combine in Indy. And there's going to be draft prospects speaking the rest of the week on the podium. There's going to be guys actually in activities starting on Thursday at the Lucas Oil Stadium. And of course, this is Thursday's show. So later on today, you'll be able to actually see some action on NFL Network. Excited about that. I'm in the convention center. If you're watching on the YouTube page, it's empty right now. It's the end of the night on Wednesday night. Got here bright and early. I was one of the first ones here and one of the last ones out. And that's just how it is when you're, a West Coast radio station and you're on the East Coast, Eastern time zone. So there's that. But this is what I do. This is what I'm built for. And this is how we get down. So I wanted to let you hear from at least a couple of the prospects, including UNLV linebacker Jackson Woodard. Vinny Bonsignore got some really good stuff from him. Really good linebacker. I think that if the Raiders get him or anyone get him, they're getting a really stinking good linebacker. Here's Jackson Woodard from Wednesday.
Jackson, this has been a kind of a long, winding road for you to get here, but can you put into words what it means to be here for you at this point in your career?
Yeah, it means everything, man. A lot of this is just through the Lord. My Lord and Savior Jesus Christ has helped me through this process, and like you said, it's been a roller coaster of a ride. And I just put my head down, trusted Him, went to work, and I'm here now. It's pretty special. It's a testament to my teammates and coaches as well. I've been blessed with a lot of good coaches in my life that have gotten me here.
If you could just look back real quick and think about what you did at UNLV, what you were a part of and helped lead, can you put into words what that means to you now in retrospect as you look back on it?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. What we were able to do in those 2 years is really special. And I have a lot of pride in that. And I know my teammates think the same. We came in, had no excuses, didn't ask questions, just went to work. And the hard work led to wins. We created a culture that's about work, about business. It's pretty special.
Now that everything's looking ahead for you, what do you want to accomplish here in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I just want to show teams who I am, what I'm about, and go and compete, be my best.
What are some of your fondest memories at Allegiant Stadium, just, playing in front of the crowd and just the stadium in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think the coolest part is when I first got there, the first game against Bryant, seeing the fans and the amount of people compared to our last game, senior night, and just the difference in attendance we had a really good fan base towards the end of that my career there. And that's pretty special, seeing that the culture shift in just the city of Las Vegas.
How do you think your time at UNLV prepared you for this week and the whole draft process coming up?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I've been blessed with incredible coaches. Coach Odom and the staff, Coach Fish and the strength and conditioning department has prepared me very well. I feel very confident coming into this process, and I feel like the last 2 years I approached the game and the process of the game like a pro, and that was a testament to how they scheduled everything and allowed us to go about our work.
To follow up on that, Sheer coming down from Purdue, are they going to come down this week?
Yeah, they should be here tomorrow, which will be pretty special. We'll be able to see them, and I'll give them a visit right after we get done, which will be cool.
To follow up on
Jackson, like any rookie, you're going to start at the bottom rung of the NFL. But your journey, do you think that helps you have a better understanding of what that process is?
Yeah, for sure. I think I have a chip on my shoulder, and it's a heavy chip. And a lot of that just comes from me. I really don't care what other people say. I never have, never will. It'll never make me who I am. But man, I'm ready to get on a team and just outwork everyone. Learn my way.
You guys prioritize special teams, and a lot of your starters played special teams, including yourself. Obviously, that's going to be a pathway for any rookie in the NFL. Again, that experience at UNLV with that priority for special teams, do you think that gives you a little bit of an edge going to the next level?
Yeah, I think it's huge. Like you said, not every starter in college plays special teams. So the fact that I did and guys like Ricky did will give us that edge up coming into the next level. But like anything, you're going to have to earn it. But now it's going to help me big time.
Really good stuff from him. And again, he helped turn that UNLV program around. They did some really good things there and had success for a program that never had success on the football field like that. So Coach Barry Odom, who left UNLV and is now in Purdue, got the bag there from the Boilermakers. He did a great job in the couple seasons that he was there in Las Vegas, and Jackson Woodard was a big reason why I brought him through the transfer portal along with Ricky White. Ricky White's a guy that will speak on Friday, while Shador, Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, they're all going to be speaking, and yeah, they're all speaking at the same time. So I guess I got to figure that out. But some really good stuff from Jackson Woodard. Just a hell of a football player. Actually, when I was on Game Night on ESPN Radio, had a chance to catch up with him while he was still at UNLV and just, kind of talk about his mindset. And that is a football player's football player, right? He's a guy from Arkansas. He's just a really good dude. So, yeah, I think that's a really good player right there, and definitely someone that the Raiders and multiple teams across the league should have on their radar. Also, real quick, got a chance to catch up with South Carolina edge Kyle Kennard. Again, he was at the podium as well. And, I knew that the question was going to be asked, hey, have you talked to this team? Have you talked to that team? I knew that question was going to be asked. I refused to ask that question to anybody this week after my guy Emery Hunt made sure to point that out. Like, yes, they're going to talk to everyone. If they haven't, they will soon enough. And, yes, they'd like to be drafted by everyone. So those are questions that we don't have to ask. So I made a point to make sure I'm not going to ask those questions. But, of course, someone did. Here's a couple minutes with South Carolina edge Kyle Kennard.
Have you had a chance to interview with the Rams or the Chiefs?
Not the Rams, but I have a formal interview with the Chiefs tonight.
What are your thoughts about potentially playing alongside Georgia?
Oh, sorry. I take that back. I had a formal interview with the Chiefs yesterday.
And what about your thoughts about playing potentially with George Karlaftis in Kansas City?
That would be just an honor. George's a good player. He's a great player. Getting that, even everybody in the defensive line playing with them would be a hell of an experience. And I like Coach Cullen as well.
But obviously, a lot of agents, they came after you. You ended up choosing Bobby McCray Sports. What is it that went into that decision, and how would you look back on it? Like, how confident are you that you made the right?
Yeah, Bobby's my guy. Not just Bobby, Demarius, Melissa, they're all my people. I stuck with them in high school for like NIL things and stuff like that. And I kind of wanted to go with somebody who you trust. It's not like an agent can get you drafted higher, so you should go with someone who you trust, who has the resources to get things done for you, and I felt like they were second to none.
When teams are asking what are they getting in you, what are you telling them?
I tell them that they're getting a complete defensive end. Everyone thinks I can just rush the passer, which I definitely can do, but I can make plays in the backfield as well. I can set great edges. I can drop into a flat or a coverage if you need me to, and I'm actually a great team leader.
What do you feel like you need to work on the most?
A few things, but I feel like I'll give you the run game.
College, have you met formally with the Dallas Cowboys yet?
No, I have not.
Is that in the books for the future?
I would hope so. I'm not sure yet.
That's another really good player. I just want to get him on your radar. So when you hear his name, especially if you start hearing some buzz from him while him and the defensive linemen are all out there and linebackers are out there in the field for Thursday and at Lucas Oil Stadium, say, oh, man, that guy, hold on. And you can go back and do some research. He did some really good things at South Carolina as a big-time leader as well. He does a lot of things great. He's got some, a little bit of work to do still on some things, run defense, whatever. There's some things he's got to work on, but he's a guy. He's a dude that's going to get after it. So looking forward to seeing what he can do in the rest of the class as well as they get out there and just compete. Again, it's not the end-all, be-all when you go out there and compete. I say it all the time. The scouting combine should be something that confirms something that you already know, right? And if all of a sudden you discover some player, you're like, man, this guy's a hell of a player, go back and look at the film and see, right? Just because if you discover him on the combine with, basically T-shirts and draws on, it's basically the underwear Olympics. If all of a sudden you discover him at the combine, he probably isn't really that player. I always, when they talk about the Raiders, I always refer back to Bruce Campbell and Darius Hayward-Bay. I think those are two poster childs for discovering football players at the NFL Scouting Combine. Darius Hayward-Bay actually had a pretty decent career in the league, but he wasn't where the Raiders selected him. He wasn't worth the pick that they picked him at. Bruce Campbell, he couldn't do. I was at a dinner with the Raiders the other night, and I mentioned Bruce Campbell's name, and Will Kiss, who's been doing the PR for the Raiders for so long, was like, Bruce Campbell, you remember him? I was like, yeah, I remember that as soon as he ran and as soon as he lifted and as soon as he went through some of the drills on the broadcast for the combine, they kept saying, oh, the Raiders are going to draft him. He said, yep, they sure did. As soon as he started, and they sure did. And so then that's when I said, yeah, and he couldn't do anything once he got on the grass, right? He was great in drills, great in practice, great in the weight room, terrible when he got into games. Couldn't block, couldn't do anything. He was not good. So there is that. That was one Bruce Campbell that the Raiders selected. I'll never forget that name. But that's going to do it for today's show. Again, there'll be players on the field later on Thursday at Lucas Oil Stadium. We'll also hear from more prospects throughout the course of the day, so we'll bring that to you as well. And who knows where this Matt Stafford story is going to go, what twist and turn it's going to take next. But trust and believe, we'll be here to talk about it on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.